going to do is look at 3 ideas that come from the arena of learning science, and we're going to think about how we apply those in design of a learning solution, whether that's blended or face-to-face or just e-learning or whatever it might be. And the first thing we're going to think about is the idea of forgetting to learn. Now, come with me on a little journey, will you? I'd like you to cast your memories back. I'd like you to think about your childhood and maybe the garden that you played in, or the yard that was your back garden, all concrete mine was, with a greenhouse in the middle of it for some reason. But cast your mind back to that environment that you grew up in as a child, and I want you to go really more specific, and I want you just for a moment to remember something very specific about that garden, about the contents in that garden or yard, about the environment that you used to play in. Just give me a moment to think of that thing. So I can remember lots of little details about the garden that I grew up in. I can remember the big concrete slabs, and in between them there was really mossy patches, little bits of grass that I used to push my cars, and I always had to go over the little mossy bits when I got to the break. You may have thought of something else that's unique about your garden, unique about your memory, and it's quite possible you haven't thought about that thing for 10 years, 20 years, I don't know, 40 years maybe even longer, yet your brain has somehow retained that little piece of information and you've just managed to recall. Now, that's actually quite phenomenal, isn't it? Because we carry around in our brains all this information, all this knowledge that we don't call on very often. And maybe you've just recalled something about your garden that you haven't called on for many decades, yet it's there. It's lodged in the brain. Now we're going to think about, in this first idea, about how actually our memories work a little bit. Now some of you will be familiar with this particular graph. The Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, the original theory of disuse. Most people in L&D have come across this at some point in their lives. It suggests, actually quite frighteningly, that after about 2 days you're left with only about 20% of the memory of the thing that you picked up 2 days earlier. So this massive drop-off. Now what's interesting is that this was 1885, okay, so this research is pretty long in the tooth. It was good, but it was only very much part of the story, and it's now being referred to as the old theory of misuse. So let's quickly introduce the new theory of misuse, disuse rather, not misuse, disuse. Very different things, those. The theory of misuse, I wouldn't go there. Don't type that into Google. Theory of disuse, the modern theory of disuse, says actually that rather than being the enemy of learning, forgetting is absolutely the friend of learning. It goes very much hand in hand. Our ability to forget things is very useful. It's useful in a number of ways. It's useful as kind of spam junk filter for a start. It helps us sift and lose a lot of stuff that we don't need to hold on to. So, in any given day, you receive loads of information. Most of that will come in one ear and go out the other, or through your eyes and into your mind, and then disperse very quickly again. But the logic is actually, forgetting something helps us to remember it. Now the reason for that is simple. If you remembered everything, if our retention of memory was 100%, you would never have to study anything more than once, would you? That'd be cool, but it's not realistic. We're not like that. The fact is we do forget, and Ebbinghaus had a point that actually our memories fade very quickly. After a couple of days, 8%, he argued, disappears. But the new theory of disuse, that suggests that forgetting is the best friend of learning, because if I forget something and then I remember it, the scientists tell us we remember it in a better way, in a longer way in fact. So if something's popped back into our memories a couple of days later, just as it's about to disappear from our memories, we'll hang on to that just a little bit longer next time round. And then if we pop it into our memories again, just as it's about to disappear that time, we'll hang on to it even longer during that period. And so that idea works. So if I'm about to forget something and I'm reminded of it, then I'll retain it for longer. And as I do that, just remember it before I forget, the periods of memory get longer and longer until it's lodged in our long-term memory. So the details of your back garden, your yard, that you've just recalled, were probably put there day after day after day, weren't they? As you played in the garden, as you messed about, as you cried and wept and cheered and cut your leg and did all those things, those little memories build up time and time and time again, again and again and again, and they're lodged there. We can't forget them in an incredible way, even though it might be 40 years since we remembered that idea. That's a theory. Modern theory of disuse. What's the practical application in learning design then? So I want you to have a think about that, quick chat in your groups, just pair with the person next to you and tweet. As long as you've got @iManage in the Twitter feed, we can all have a look at it and I can read some of them out and see what you're thinking. So theory of disuse, what does that mean when we think about designing great learning? Have some ideas? Tweet it. Okay, they're starting to come in. We have some success. This is good. I was going to look silly if there weren't any tweets that came through at this point. But, a real simple level, Liz, you put use recap questioning. Yeah, active recap is going to be a key part, isn't it? Of actually, during the course of an event, a day, we can use active recap to get people recalling pieces of information during the course of the day. Repetition, theory of disuse, repetition, repetition, repetition. We do learn, don't we, through repetition. It's one of those things that helps us to focus and log it in. So yeah, repetition is a great watchword here. Jan, thanks for following. Recycle materials regularly. So Mark, you put that, have you got any more information to that? Where's Mark? I don't know where Mark is. Yeah. Any more information? Can't see. Oh, on the back, yeah. So, yeah, recycling materials. So, getting them round and round and getting them out to people again. I can't hear a word that you say, Mark. I'm really sorry about that, but we'll take it for granted it was good. Okay, what else have we got? Introduce new concepts, do all together, then go back. Reflective learning. Yeah, the action learning sets work in this way, don't they, as we work through. Need several touch points over time. Now this I think is really important. It's important on my next fact that we're going to look at as well in a moment. But what we really need to do is to think about how we touch the learner multiple times, how we actually break up that big chunk of information that we are expecting people to retain and remember into those little packets that actually remind them of what they should be doing, helps them remember what they learnt in a session, that refocuses them, that effectively keeps it front of mind rather than bottom of drawer. So that's a great thought here. Regularly review and establishing goals, likely to work best with regular testing. Yeah, we'll come back to the testing one. There's loads of tweets here. So this is idea 1. I've only got 30 minutes, so we need to look at idea 2, I think. So let's go then.